In this movie, we take a look at how to apply our different font size options to our project. So here I have already opened up my OpenSparks project. Now this is the same file that we've been using throughout this section so far, and I already have the CSS and the HTML open as well. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to start off by more or less leveling the playing field when it comes to font size. Now the reason why I do this is because I want to explicitly set up what font sizes I'm using for some elements that may be preset by a default browser style. So I'm going to jump up here towards the top, and I have a tendency to kind of group my styles together so that it's easier for me to find what I'm looking for whenever I have a single CSS sheet. So I tend to group my type selectors up towards the top, then my class selectors, and then my IDs. Or sometimes I flip that order with the IDs and then the classes. So anyway, what I want to do is I want to target all of my H tags. So I'll set up all the way to H6. And then I also want to go ahead and set all division tags and all P tags. And I want to set that to font size 1M. Now a lot of the things that we will be doing for our project will be setting up a flexible design so that our end user is going to be able to resize the browser window and zoom into text without completely destroying our design. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and jump back over here. Whenever I refresh, I see that everything shrinks down to be essentially the same size. Now of course there is some difference here because it looks like our headers are still kind of bold, which is what the default browser style is. But that's okay for right now. We're going to end up working with our headers a little bit more as we move throughout this course. And in fact, in this movie, we'll actually change how the H1s and the H2s in our headers are being sized. Now because we're going to be having this same property over and over again, font-size, I'm actually going to go ahead and just copy that. So it's going to save me a little bit of time, and it's going to reduce the amount of carpal tunnel I'm going to get. So for the H1, for our header, I want a font size of 1.8M. And then for the H2, I'll go ahead and set up the same. Because visually I want them to look the same even though they are going to be quite different. Now while I'm in here setting up my header, I'll go ahead and change my site mission and have that so that it's a little bit smaller than our base font, and I'll do 0.9M. I'll go ahead and save that and then jump back into my browser and refresh, and there we go. And it ends up sizing back up, and it may be somewhat similar to what it was before, but notice how our OpenSparks and the Kindling for Open Source Creativity is right at the same size. So that's kind of the effect that we wanted. Now for the next styles that we're going to be setting up, we actually need to add in some structure into our HTML document so that we can target those things most appropriately. So we're going to need to set up a few different div tags and attributes to some of our existent elements. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll jump into my HTML and I'll scroll on down here to our related links section. And I'll put in a div tag with an ID of related. And then right after that we have an about section and then a tip of the week. This section is going to make up our sidebar. So I'm going to go ahead and name that div ID sidebar, and then jump down to the bottom of that and close out that div. And I'm going to go ahead and continue on down because we need to set up some identifiers to each one of our headers for our tutorials. So I'm going to go ahead and save myself a little bit of time here by typing in this ID equal header, and then I'll copy that, because what's going to change between each one of these is what's at the front. So we have our ID for our GIMP header, and we go down to our Inkscape, and I'll make that my Inkscape header, and then go on down to the Maya and paste that in, and then change that to the Maya header, and then run on down here to Blender, paste that in, make that the Blender header, and move on down to our Scribus, paste that in, and then turn that into the Scribus header. And there we go. Now we have our HTML structure that's going to allow us to target specific elements and style them and change their font size, as well as other properties. So I'll go ahead and save that. And that concludes this part of applying our styles.